This episode is brought to you by BigMooseCoffeeCompany.co. Pals, welcome to another episode of Everything Endurance. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope everyone's keeping well, staying safe, staying home. You better be staying home. And once again, as I'm going to keep doing, thank you to everyone out there who's, on the front lines of this thing. And, we will do our best to carry on sitting around in our pants watching Netflix for as long as you guys are out there fighting. So thank you very much for that. If you are going back to this and downloading it from, say, a few years in the future, then welcome to the dystopian past. Welcome to lockdown. I hope you enjoy being outside. We've got, and we're kind of continuing a theme here. It's been an opportunity through these weeks, and we've got to find silver linings where we can, and the one we've managed to find is that we are reaching out and connecting with people in different ways, in the ways that we can, and we are reaching out and connecting with some really interesting people and getting them onto the podcast so that we can put them in front of you. And today's guest is really interesting. This is a different kind of a guest for us. This is a broadcast journalist who's been a Sky News correspondent since 2005. This person has interviewed some truly exceptional elite sports people, the likes of Eliud Kipchoge, Tiger Woods, David Beckham, Zlatan Ibrahimovic. He's covered the 2018 World Cup. He covered the Olympics in London in 2012. And we are going to tap into his knowledge today, drop some major names, hear some really interesting stories, and see what he can tell us about these exceptional sports people. So I'm not going to put you through too much more of listening to me blather on. Let us speak to today's guest, which is Enda Brady.
Hey, Will, how are you doing? Good to see you again, mate.
I am very well under the circumstances, thank you very much. How's the lockdown treating you?
Yeah, fortunate in that, believe it or not, public service broadcasters are classed as critical workers. So I get out to work 4 or 5 days a week, live in the countryside, so I'm able to train cross-country, keep away from people. But, let's be honest, I think it's difficult for everyone, but it's needed and it's what has to be done.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've been perfectly happy living a very different life over the last couple of weeks. You won't be able to tell from what you can see of me, but I am in pajamas from the waist down. I'd love that to just be a joke, Ender, but I don't think I've worn outdoor trousers in days now. There's just no point. My shoes think I've died.
I think we're all changing how we live, but we're not in the kind of Italian style lockdown where it's absolutely stay in. We're fortunate in that we can still get out and exercise, do a bit of shopping when needed, but life goes on. Yeah,
it absolutely does. And we're here today having a chat. It's odd how events like this connect people in different ways. I've been talking to some immensely interesting people over the last couple of weeks, and I'm gonna count you under that category, Ender, as immensely interesting.
Let's hope so.
You're a first for us. We've had our fair share of adventurers and endurance runners and endurance cyclists. What we've never had before is a genuine card-carrying professional news correspondent. So, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, yeah, I mean, as a Sky correspondent, you've got a pretty glittering CV of interviewing amazing athletes from around the world, but not too shabby as a runner yourself. Are you, 30 plus marathons now?
Yeah, 32. This year I was hoping to run 5 or 6. I was hoping to have done Vienna and London, and obviously London postponed, Vienna cancelled completely. Just how it is. But I love running. I love the challenge and, finding interesting places to go and putting a bit of effort into getting there and thinking, how am I going to do this, training for it. Very lucky to live in the countryside here in Oxfordshire, so there's fields literally 2 minutes out my driveway. Just keep going. And I love it. It's a great discipline. And the marathon distance is what intrigues me. And then I've kind of stumbled a bit into ultra running as well. And that's been a beautiful discovery for me.
Yeah, and this is, in fact, how we met, just to come full circle. You stumbled your way all the way across to Kenya in 2018 for the Rangers Ultra.
Yeah, that was one of the best experiences of my life. I mean, it was just such an incredible week. What we saw, what we did, the people we met, the scenery, seeing a rhino in the wild, giraffes, elephants, the best race. I mean, if anyone ever thinks, would I like to run the For Rangers Ultra? If you get a place, go do it and just say afterwards, I'm glad I heard that Irish bloke talking to Will, because it was the best week of my life. It was amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, I do just want to reassure anyone who's listening to this that we haven't paid Enda or in any way offered him any kind of financial endorsement to say this.
No, not at all. I'm just being honest. I mean, it was just so well organised. The people who were running it were so much fun. The characters we met and the challenges every day. Every day there was something different to physically get around, whether it was going over a hill or a mountain, and there seemed to be an awful lot of climbing. I didn't know too much about Kenya before we got there. There seemed to be a lot of running at altitude. And then, there was kind of flat bits where you've got to stay mentally focused. They just seem to go on forever. Well, I'll never forget the finish line, Eliud Kipchoge there handing out the medals. I mean, it was just an outer body experience for amateur runners like us. It was just so good.
Coming from my side of it as well, I found myself on the third day of that race hanging out the side of a helicopter with my camera, taking photos of the runners from above, and literally screaming and squealing. The helicopter pilot couldn't get over it. That's his every day. But I'm looking down from a helicopter, looking at you as little dots running along, and there are elephants around you out there in the wild, and rhino, and it's just an absolutely astonishing place. It's obviously gutting that we're not going to be able to go again this year, but we'll be back next year because the work that they do out there is so important. And I think that's the aspect of it for me. It's not just that it's an absolute jamboree of an adventure when you get there. It's that you can see face to face the people who are benefiting from the fundraising that came from it. And we're over the £250,000 mark now for the first 2 years.
Extraordinary. And the difference it makes, saving the wildlife, the conservation aspect of it, and the difference to the men and women, the rangers, the kit, the equipment, the life insurance policies they have, because they could get killed going out to work every day because the poachers want the rhino so desperately that they're tooled up, they're heavily armed, and it's a war. It really is a war. So they've got now life insurance, which they've never had previously. They've got an outdoor gym, and that all came off the back of people raising money and families and friends chipping in, Save the Rhino doing really well out of the race. It was just a win-win for everyone. But if I live to be 100, I will never forget that week because it was just so perfect in every way. It was amazing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you say it, and I'd have to agree. I always come back to Kenya over and over again. It's too simple to call it a race. It's a much, much bigger thing than that. Anyway, I could quite happily jabber on about that for a solid hour. But 32 marathons for you then, Enda. When did that begin? It wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, so relatively short time ago. 2011, my mother was quite sick with breast cancer, and I felt that if she got through that, I would do something. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but if I could do something for a breast cancer charity. So I ended up running the Dublin Marathon in October 2012 for Marie Keating Cancer Care in Dublin. I think I raised about $6,500 for them, and it was just, I was amazed because you've realize how many friends your parents have or how much respect people have for them in the community, and people I didn't really know. There was €20, €50 popping up, money coming in left, right and centre, and I thought, wow, this is good, this is really good. And then I had to run the race, of course, and it came after the London Olympics. I just felt energized. My mother had got better, thank God, and she was one of the lucky ones. London Olympics was an amazing experience to report on. And then Dublin in October, I hadn't run a marathon distance ever before. I think the most I'd run was 20 miles in training. And I ended up finishing it in 3 hours 41, which I was really happy with. I mean,
that's not too shabby at all for a first marathon. That's amazing. People talk about that sort of golden sub 4. Boom, straight away, first effort.
Yeah, it was great. And, the camaraderie of runners, meeting people. And obviously, as a completely fresh marathon runner, I remember looking at all these guys and people with the kind of, the different stockings on and all the gear and everything. And I was just I hadn't a clue what I was doing really gear. I hadn't a clue about anything. But the finish line appeared, you finish. And I just thought, wow, I want to do this again. And I did. And I got into London then in April, and I've just kind of got a little bit. London in April 2013 was the worst race of my life because I collapsed at 17 miles.
Oh, no.
It was really hot. I knew nothing, it was really hot. I bought brand new trainers the day before because I ran with a friend of mine who's a footballer for 10K, and he was in the Premier League at the time, Kevin Kilban, who played for Ireland. He'd bought new trainers the day before, and I was with him, and I thought, God, they're pretty cool trainers. I'll buy a pair of them. He bought new socks, and I thought, I'll buy a pair of them. And then he set off like a rocket, and I kept up with him for 10 kilometres. And of course, then he waved goodbye. He went off and finished in 3:14. And at 17 miles, having not drunk enough, not worn a baseball cap, it was the hottest year of the London Marathon.
Yeah.
So I ended up collapsing at 17 miles, which wasn't good. Got up, staggered my way past the last 9 miles, and finished in 4:15 in a lot of pain. But that medal, I learned more from that race than any other experience.
Yeah, I know. People get really, really very down about the NF sometimes, but they're the most incredibly rich learning experiences. You don't know how to cope with those things until they've happened to you, really. Yeah.
And you always go back to them. I will never, ever run a marathon again now in heat without taking on board the right amount of water, having a cap, stuff like that. You just learn. You learn from your mistakes. And it sounds like cliche, but by God, it's true.
Yeah, well, if anyone listening from this is training for your first marathon at the moment, Enda's done that, so you don't have to. Okay? Wear the hat, drink the water, don't buy brand new shoes. You're going to be fine. London 2012, I've got to go back to that. That must have been that just must have been incredibly positive to cover as a journalist.
Oh, it was uplifting. It was amazing. I don't have the vocabulary to do it justice. I get tingles when I think about it. The morning of the opening day, we had to be in quite early. We were broadcasting from a balcony at the Guoman Hotel, which is on Tower Bridge, which is actually where the London Marathon elite athletes always base themselves. They're always in the registration and the interviews are always in that hotel. I was driving along the embankment, listening to Radio 2. Chris Evans gave everyone the big shout out, London 2012 starts today. And he's such an inspiring, uplifting broadcaster anyway. Brilliant fella. And he played the Clash London Calling, and I'm driving along, looking at the embankment, looking at the city in London coming alive in front of me at 6 a.m. And I just thought, there is no better place to be on earth today than this. Everyone, no matter where you're in a village in Peru watching your television, or you're in Japan watching your television, at some stage today, you are going to look at London. And I just thought, wow, this is just epic.
Yeah, it absolutely was. My ex at the time was involved in the opening ceremony, and I managed to get tickets for a couple of events. And I still get that kind of feeling just thinking back to that little contact time I had with it as a thing. It's absolutely amazing. So over the years as well, you've had an opportunity to speak to some pretty exceptional sports people.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to have to get you to drop some names, so...
There's people I've enjoyed interviewing. There's people that you meet and you think, what's the fuss about? I'll be honest with you. There's people who are extremely famous and you question, why they went into sport but there's the people that I genuinely admire. So we had Team Sky for 10 years, and I was very fortunate in that I was able to cover the Tour de France every year. I have a very good relationship with Chris Froome, who is a fantastic athlete and human, a very, very good person. And I would say, first off, Chris Froome for me was a guy who has used every drop of talent. And the one thing all these top athletes and sportsmen and women have in common for me is that they have exceptional ability anyway, but they take that and they are so driven. They're so driven to get every last drop and scintilla of achievement out of what God has given them. They just work and work. And Froome epitomizes that for me. Getting your head around the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, the Vuelta a España, Olympic medals, training and staying focused, and the discipline they need in their diet, in their life, just truly extraordinary people. And I've quite a few good anecdotes about Froome. I remember one year we had arranged an interview, and it would always take place at the end of the second week. So the tour's 3 weeks long, obviously. If he was knocking on the door of the yellow jersey after the second week, I was allowed to go and interview him. That was the deal we had with Sir Dave Brailsford and the PR people for Team Sky. So we're up a mountain range, me and the cameraman, Moston. We get all our gear set up, everything's set up. It was baking hot, the stage had finished, and in sweeps this Team Sky vehicle, and Brailsford gets out of it, and excuse the language, but he said to me, Froome's had a bucket of piss thrown over him, word for word. That was what he said to me. And I think it was 2015, and it was 2015. And I said, sorry? And he repeated it. And some French guy had waited at the top of a hill with a bucket of urine, waited for Froome, and threw it all over him. And Froome, yeah, that happened.
I thought that was going to be a metaphor in some way, that like he's just had a bad day. An actual bucket of actual piss.
Yeah, that happened. So then I waited for Froome to arrive, and I wanted to get, before I reported this, I wanted his confirmation. And I said, Froome, has that happened? And he went, yeah. And I was like, and I thought to myself, there's no way he will do the interview with us now. You know, we travelled all this way. I think we were in the Massif Central. We were in a hotel side of a hill in the middle of nowhere. I mean, people who don't cover sport or cycling or events, they will think that millionaire sports people stay in luxurious hotels. They do occasionally. On the tour, sometimes they're staying in a barely like a 3-star, 2.5-star hotel. This was like a lump of gravel on the side of a hill. They had a garden out the back, which we kind of commandeered, and we set up the shot with the 2 chairs. It was absolutely brilliant. Froome came out, had a shower, they had their food. He came out and did the interview and answered every single question. Every single question. And it got to the stage where, you know, I said to him, why did the guy do it? And he said, look, you know, he obviously doesn't like me. He's read some stuff online. And I said, well, let's look at some of these things people say about you online. And you get some of these athletes, you know, there'll be allegations against them. Froome answered every single question. You know, he's an exemplary guy, a phenomenal athlete, good fun to be around. And I've always enjoyed interviewing. But that interview, for me, just told me so much about him, because I honestly think if he'd been maybe an international footballer or some other sport, some press office person, some PR would have come and said, really sorry, but this isn't the time. We can't do it now. We'll do it in 6 months' time, or you'll get the interview again. Froome just came out and sat down, spoke about what happened. And then I said to him, look, you know, I've been reading these things on the internet. People think that your bike has a hidden motor. That's why you're so good. And he looked at me. These are some of the conspiracy theories that are out there. And he said to me, he said, can I just say that is the finest compliment anyone can pay a professional cyclist, to say that there's a motor hidden in my bicycle. He nailed the interview. He was absolutely brilliant. But Froome is one of the good guys that you just enjoy seeing around. And if he ever listens to this, I wish him the very best for the Tour de France whenever it happens, wherever it happens, because I really hope he wins it a 5th time. He's got 4, and one of my most treasured items is a yellow jersey signed by Chris Froome to me, and I love it.
Oh, that's fantastic. No, I mean, he sounds like the consummate professional, which is amazing. Is that something that you find regularly among the sort of elite sports people that you've interviewed?
Yeah,
I'm not going to ask you to drop any names for people who've maybe been particularly difficult, but
no, I'll tell you. Every single elite sports person that you see on your TV, winning medals or playing football matches or achieving things, they have phenomenal talent. And, you always hear the story of the bloke, there's a bloke I know down the pub, or he was on the books of this football club and he never quite made it. At the age of 10, 11, 12, all these people have pretty much the same ability. What is different, this is my personal view, what is different with elite sports people is that they are so driven to the point of obsession that they're not interested. They don't see their friends. They wouldn't really have a massive circle of friends. They don't want to go to the birthday parties. They don't want to go drinking when the time comes. They're not massively into getting a girlfriend at the age of 17 or 18 or a boyfriend or whatever. They are solely focused on taking the talent they've got and wringing every last drop out of it. And I mean, look at the world of horse racing. I count AP McCoy as a very good friend of mine. He just sacrificed everything, absolutely everything. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, never ate fatty foods. His diet, socializing. All he ever wanted to do was win races. How can I win more races? And there's times I go and interview him on a day when he'd won I remember in particular one day he'd won 4 races. And I said, AP, you must be thrilled with that. And he goes, there was 7 races in there. Did you see the other 3? And like, that's the mentality. Wow. 4 out of 7 wins. That's not good enough. And then, you know, they're fascinating people. Elite sports people really, really intrigue me, that their mindset, they are just laser focused on what they want to achieve.
Well, I'm going to have to ask, because you mentioned in the sort of preamble just before we started on this recording properly that you've met Eliud Kipchoge a couple of times. I mean, I've only had a very brief experience of chatting to the guy myself, which was out there in Kenya. And he was an amazingly... he had an incredible humility. He was absolutely open to coming and talking to people. He was curious about what we were doing and why we were there. It's just a really lovely guy. And to do what he's done, would you put him down as a similar character, that he's focused his whole life into that training? I
think what we saw in Vienna, going under 2 hours, that was amazing. A lifetime's work. I mean, he is on a different level. I mean, you've got levels of sporting ability, and then you've got they're not even elite in my mind. You know, they are the elite. They are the super elites of the elite. You get guys like Kipchoge. The world is full of runners of different abilities, sizes and shapes. If you're out running, brilliant for you. You're getting the buzz out of it. You're getting the fitness. Kipchoge has done something that no other human being had done before, and it'll be curious to see how long it takes someone to go under 2 hours again. I mean, you're right in what you said about humility. So I met him for the first time in Kenya at the finishing line. He presented the medals. I then met him, that was August 2018. I met him then in April 2019 at the London Marathon last year. I interviewed him a few days before it. And I had in my pocket, I brought the medal from Kenya to get him to sign the ribbon, because he said something at the end, which I'll never forget. We crossed the line, me and my training partner, Liz Winton from Save the Rhino. We crossed the line, and he said, no human is limited. He said that at the finish in Kenya. Yeah. And I thought, this guy, I'd never met the guy before. I'd followed him. I'd watched his races on TV. I'd read about him. I was curious about him. He was so humble, kind, friendly, and encouraging. And then he said to us, no human is limited. Liz now has that tattooed on her arm. She's got no human is limited tattooed on her arm.
Fantastic.
So I then turn up at the hotel in London to interview him, thinking if I'm lucky, I'll get maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Soon as I produced the medal from Kenya, he said to me, where did you get this? And I said, you gave it to me in Kenya. And he's chatting away. I produced a little kind of marker pen and a Sharpie. And I said, look, would you mind signing No Human is Limited? So he signed his autograph, and he signed No Human is Limited on the ribbon of the medal from Kenya. And we had a chat. And I mean, he's just such an inspirational man. But, you know, you don't get to run a marathon in under 2 hours by being lucky. You know, no. Okay, he's super, super fast anyway. But he wanted... I asked him at the end in Kenya, I said to him, you know, you missed out on running the 2 hours in Monza by 26 seconds. I said, do you think you'll ever have a go again? And he hinted that this was something that, you know, he would not stop until he did it. And then to be in Vienna, I actually ended up reporting in Vienna for Sky News and Sky Sports News at the finishing line in Vienna. And to see Chris Froome was there, the president of Kenya was there, Sir Dave Brailsford, all these amazing people. And the team of, he had his coach Patrick Sang with him, and 41 pacemakers. And these were like the fastest people in the world, over 5 and 10 kilometers. And they were rotating in and out, because that's as much as they can stay with them for. Yeah. They can do a super fast 5K in maybe 13 minutes, but they can't do 10. They can't do 12. And Kipchoge just kept going. And the thing, I'll tell you, Will, what really, really intrigued me that day about humanity, I'm commentating on a human doing something no man or woman has ever done before. And I go on Twitter, and people are telling me, it's all about his shoes, mate. Yeah, check his shoes. It's all about his shoes. What's he doing with the laser? And these, in my head, these are, you know, and you look at the profile, these are big blokes in their 50s, overweight men who, you know, you feel like saying the best thing you could do is actually buy some trainers yourself, pal. You know, the negativity on social media, and people were making out that he was, he was on drugs. He had these shoes that were made from the laser beam was helping him. I mean, you can set a laser beam for you or me at 1 hour 59 pace for a marathon. If we're good, if we're lucky, if we're fit and we're super fast, I'll stay with that beam for 400 meters.
On a good day. On a very good day.
On a good day. Your average fit, good marathoner is going to be able to run a Kipchoge pace for 400 meters.
It's astonishing when you put it that way. I remember watching at the time, it was sort of going viral that I think it was at the Expo for the next London or one of the major marathons after that. They had people jumping on a treadmill to see how long they could hold his pace for. And it would be seconds for most people. And these aren't just guy on the street. These are people that were there because they're running a marathon the next day. And that's an incredible level of fitness for an amateur, for a guy walking around in the street. We're not taking anything away from anyone there. He is on another planet with his running. The ability to maintain that sprint level pacing with the composure that he does it in and the amount of control that they have it's incredible to me.
He is a hugely intelligent man. I interviewed him at the end, and I said to him, what did you say to the guys the night before? And I'd been told by a couple of the pacemakers that they'd had a team meeting the night before, and Kipchoge walked into the room. And he said to them, I said to them, I need you to come to the moon with me and come back to Earth. And that's what he said in the interview. And he said, we went to the moon and we came back to Earth. And I thought it was one of those interview moments. This is live on Sky News. And I was thinking, my spine tingled. I just, like, every hair in my back
got me then.
up. I just thought, you're talking to the man who has just run a marathon under 2 hours, the first person in history to do this. And he's talking about going to the moon and coming back to Earth. And he's so happy. He's so positive. He's so encouraging. And at the end of the interview, I got killed on social media for this. At the end of the interview, I asked for his autograph. I said, one last request. I said, please, would you sign this? And he signed it. They'd produce a special media brochure of the day with, maps and time charts and who he is. And the connection with Kenya, the fact that I'd interviewed him 3 times before that, if I'd been a reporter in the 60s and I'd met Neil Armstrong on the day he actually came back from the moon, are you going to ask him for an autograph? I know it's unprofessional and I probably shouldn't have done it. But in the end, I gave it to my training partner because she's obsessed with him and she had "No human is limited" written on her arm. And I thought, that's for you.
That's an amazing thing to do. And I don't think unprofessional counts at a moment like that. That is one of those moments that's huge. It's enormous. It transcends what you're supposed to do on a daily basis. So no, anyone who gave you a kicking on Twitter for that, they'll have to come and see me. I'm not having that. I've got to ask as well, you saw him then just after he crossed the finish line.
Fresh as a daisy.
That's what I wanted to know. He looks it. When you look at the footage, I expected him to cross the line and a facade to slip for at least a second, because the physical effects of having to move at that pace for that long, there must be pain involved in it, and it must take a lot to keep focused and keep moving through it. But I never saw him show it.
He ran straight into the arms of his wife, Grace. Patrick Sang was there. I mean, everyone's jumping, everyone's excited. It was extraordinary. And when you interview him, he had no sweat on his face. It was just like fresh as a daisy. And he's such a quiet, dignified guy, so intelligent. He reads voraciously. He's always reading, always trying to better himself. I mean, there's a lot of sports people out there, I think, that get far too much publicity and acclaim and live off the fact that they won a football match 20 years ago or whatever. And okay, they did something great and something that the fans love. But like, this is a guy, I genuinely think, it would be my dream if he came to the UK to take him to a school and get as many kids in and interview him on a stage and just say, this lesson today, or hearing from this man, you're going to remember this for the rest of your days, because he's got so much wisdom to impart. He's got the things he comes out with. He said to me once in another interview, the strongest thing is a peaceful mind. And I thought, running is freedom. And when I run, I think of like Kipchoge quotes that he said to me. And you just think, I might be in Oxfordshire running through the woods, And I think, how amazing would this be, for Kipchoge to run here? I think he's a wonderful man. And I'm very, very grateful to him for the time he has afforded me over the past few years, and humbled that I was so fortunate to meet him.
Oh, fantastic. And an incredible learning experience for you as a runner as well. There must be so much you can take from what he's done. And I mean, do you know what does his training life look like back in Kenya? Is it all day, every day that he's at this?
So he has a very strict regime, and I know this because I very nearly made a documentary about training to go under 2 hours. And unfortunately, the man who was bankrolling everything, Sir Jim Ratcliffe from Team Ineos, he took the view that he just wanted an uninterrupted training camp with no media there. But I was meant to be spending a week with him in Kaptagat, where he lives and trains in Kenya. And I know from speaking to Kipchoge's people that it's extremely regimented. They will run long in the morning. When I say long, they'll probably do maybe 40 kilometers at pace with the pacemakers, with champion athletes, Kenyans who win marathons. They meet up at maybe 6:30 a.m. Off they go. They will run fast. They'll get their work done in the countryside. They have what they call the Boston route. So if they're training for the Boston Marathon, they'll do that. They'll run that route. They come back, they stretch, they shower, they eat. He may sleep for a couple of hours. And then in the afternoon, they do a track session, which is, speed work, but on the track. And he's extremely regimented, never touches alcohol. Stuff like cigarettes and alcohol, they're not, I shouldn't even be mentioning these things in the same sentence as Kipchoge. He eats ugali for breakfast, which is, I'm sure you've tried it.
Yeah, I'm aware.
I wouldn't be swapping my breakfast for ugali anytime soon, but it's what Kenyans eat. They love it. And
it's a block of carbohydrates, so
and there you go. It's a big block of carbs. So he's got his routine. He's got some great people around him. But the one thing about super elite athletes like Kipchoge, the discipline, the mental focus that they have. You or I, we might think, should we have that bar of chocolate? Shall we have that extra beer? These guys, if it's not going to make them faster, it's not going in their body.
So is that the thing then? Is it the discipline among these athletes, the elites that you've interviewed across the year? Is that the sort of unifying factor across them?
I would say two things: drive, discounting on the one side the fact that they've got absolute bundles of talent and the kind of bodies and brains that can do stuff that the rest of us just think, wow, how can they do that? They take this God-given natural ability and then they put it on an even higher level because of the drive and the discipline. And, what really football is my sport. And football, running, I love all sports, but I watch football. How often do we see footballers who people would say, oh, he could have done so much more, he should have won more? If Kipchoge was a footballer, I think he would have been the Ryan Giggs of the Premier League title after Premier League title, FA Cups, Champions Leagues, and at the end of his career, a trophy cabinet just full of silverware. His mentality is just different. They've just got the drive that nothing is getting in their way. People like Paula Radcliffe, just nothing is going to stop them. They're going to train and train. I know a guy who went to university with Paula Radcliffe. I don't know Paula, but he said to me that he always knew she would turn out to be exceptional because he would be waking up with a hangover at university in Loughborough, looking out the window, and she would whiz by 7 a.m. training at 18, 19 years of age at university when most people are still in bed. And he said that she was on his radar because he'd wake up with a hangover, look out the window, and this blur of lycra would go past. And, well, turns out to be Paula Radcliffe.
Wow. I guess we're talking about people here who have a real appreciation for what they've got. That they have got this talent and that they feel lucky and they value that talent. And you just talked there are footballers out there where there is the perception that they've thrown this away, and I guess that's not going to get you to that level, is it? That's not going to make you an elite athlete. You've got to understand that you've been born with a combination of factors here that have given you basically a superpower.
Yeah, and it's up to you. It's up to you to get out of your body as much as you can. And I really believe that. You know, it breaks my heart. You read these interviews of footballers. Oh, I read one the other day without naming anyone, but the most recent one I read was Mark Viduka, who played for Leeds United, played in
I
the
remember
Premier
Mark
League,
Viduka. He was very much my era.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I used to live in Leeds, and I'm a Liverpool fan. And I went to Ellen Road. It was, and I remember the date because I read the interview the other day, November 2000. And Leeds beat Liverpool 4-3, and he scored all 4 goals. And he finished his career at 34 years of age. And I just got the impression from reading the interview that he just kind of fell out of love with football. And I just think, you know, you shouldn't be wrapping up your career at 34. I know it's a personal decision. He probably thought, what more do I need to do here? I've achieved so much. I've made so much money. 34 years of age, really? I think, look at where Ronaldo is now, the level he's at. You know, again, that mindset. We're all different people, but I think the Ronaldo mindset in football, more people need to have it. Just, you know, okay, I've won that. We go again.
Yeah, I mean, at 34 years old, I don't think anyone's going to tell him that it's, you know, time to hang your boots up. Zlatan, for that matter, he must be 38, 39 now. Is he like he is in the press? Is that a caricature, or is that his personality?
Oh, Will, honestly, my arms aren't wide enough for the size of the head, the size of the ego. And yet I really like the guy. He was funny. He was engaging, an ego the size of a planet. And... fun as well. I really liked them. So I'll tell you how it came about. We're at the World Cup in Russia, backstage in Moscow, and it was the kind of the People's Park. It was the opening day. There was tens of thousands of people having a drink and a laugh. An awful lot of Peruvians. I'll always remember that, the Peru jersey, which is white with a red sash across it. Yeah. So many Peruvians everywhere you looked, because Peru hadn't qualified since 1982. And it was like the whole of Peru went to Russia. It was just like amazing. So I got an email, and it was from a very well-known credit card company saying, we've got Zlatan as our ambassador today. Would you like to interview him? So I immediately said yes. So we're invited in backstage, me and my cameraman, Chris Curtis, and the producer, Andy Marsh, great guy as well, for 2 of my Sky colleagues. And Zlatan turns up with a Russian bodyguard who had an umbrella, and he proceeded to swipe at our cameraman, Chris Curtis, to move him out of the way, even though we'd been invited in. And Zlatan arrives like a prince, a king, just walks in and struts around. And the woman from the PR company, this is funny, this actually happened. She said, okay, she was American. She goes, just so you know, for your interview, you get 1 question and you got to ask him about visa. And I was like, listen, love, that's not an interview. That's not going to happen. And I'll tell you how an interview works. I'll ask him a few questions. He'll answer. Question, answer, question, answer. That's how an interview goes. And, you know, so anyway, she makes it quite clear that unless I ask him about this credit card company, we wouldn't be doing the interview. So he has with him his agent, the one and only Mino Raiola. Oh. So I get talking to Mino. Now, I speak very good Italian. I've been learning it 20 years. Get talking to Mino, and I said to him in Italian, look, we got a bit of an issue here. This PR lady is telling us we can only ask 1 question, and it has to be about her credit card company. So he goes, ask him anything you want. So we did. So the key question for me was really, like, for our purposes, was, you know, England are embarking on the World Cup. How far do you think England can do, or how well do you think England can go in the tournament, Zlatan? And he was brilliant. And he said, look, I honestly think nobody has a very high expectation of this England team. He said, I wouldn't be surprised if they get quite deep into the tournament. And he was absolutely correct. England end up in the semi-finals. I was actually at the semi-final. They were 1-0 up. We were looking, thinking, oh my God, England could be in the final. And Zlatan was just brilliant. He was a lot of fun. And I'm working on a book called Greatest Day. So when the interview was finished, I said to his agent, Mino, I said, look, I'm working on this book. The idea is called Greatest Day. And it is 1 question to a famous sports person. Tell me about the greatest day of your career. And it's their answer. So he went over, and Mino and Zlatan are chatting in Italian. And he said to him, oh, this guy, he's got 1 more question. Will you answer it for him? It's about his book. It's called Greatest Day. And he explains the concept to Zlatan. And Zlatan looks at me and he goes, Zlatan likes this. That was what he said. Bingo. So I asked him the question. I said, tell me about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I have it on my audio clips on my phone, and it's 36 seconds long. I said, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, tell me about the greatest day of your life. And you think about what he's done, the goals he scored for Sweden, playing in World Cups, winning titles in Italy, in Spain, in France. He's won a trophy at Manchester United. He's won stuff everywhere he has been, playing for Ajax, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Barcelona, Manchester United, LA Galaxy. And it was almost like he wanted this for the public record. He said to me, I won't keep doing the voice, but he said, the greatest day of Zlatan's career was the day my mother bought me football boots at 6 years of age. And he said she was a cleaner. She was an immigrant. And he goes, we did not have money for football boots. And he was almost in tears. And wow. I saw humility with Zlatan Ibrahimovic in those 36 seconds. And then he shook my hand, we got a picture together, and he walked off. And I just thought, oh my God, that is absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Incredible. Maybe that's how he sustains it. We talk about having that appreciation of the enormous talent you've got. Well, you can't say Zlatan Ibrahimovic doesn't appreciate his talent. Like he knows he's got something huge.
Yeah, and as much as people mock the ego, if you look at his statistics, you look at the titles he's won, I think he won the only club he didn't win the title at was Manchester United. He was just unfortunate in that he was not in the Fergie era, because if he'd been there, in the Fergie era, you'd be looking at serious silverware.
Absolutely. So you're putting this book together. You've asked this question to a few people, and there's got to be one more that sticks out in your head.
Yeah, so Kipchoge was running under 2 hours. Mo Farah, interviewed Mo Farah, and it was really interesting, actually. Mo Farah, out of everything he's achieved, all the gold medals, the marathon victories, the Olympics, he said the birth of his children. And, so everyone is answering the question in a deeply personal way. And I'm working my way through. I've got a list of people that I need to keep chatting to. Paul Mcgraw, who used to play for Ireland, he's a very good friend of mine at home. And I asked Paul about the greatest day of his career. So he played Euro 88, Italia 90, World Cup 94. And Paul said that the greatest day of his career was beating Italy 1-0 in the Giant Stadium in New Jersey in 1994, the World Cup. So he marked Baggio out of the game that day. I mean, Roberto Baggio, at the time, the greatest striker in the world, Paul didn't give him a sniff of goal. And Paul said to me that one memory he had, the game goes by in a blur. The one memory he had was standing in the tunnel. And you might remember the World Cup in 94, it was very, very hot. And obviously, Paul is black, but you've got the rest of the Irish team are pasty white Irish people like me. We're not great in sunshine. Jack Charlton, big, gruff English guy who was our manager at the time, World Cup winner with England, Bobby's brother. He had said to the lads, you're not warming up, it's too hot. We'll do the warm-up in the dressing room. So the lads hadn't been out on the pitch really to appreciate, this big, vast bowl of a stadium. So long story short, they're standing in the tunnel. All the Italians are there looking suave and sophisticated, looking at this rabble of Irish who they thought they'd probably wipe the floor with us for opening game of a World Cup. A World Cup that they went to the final and only lost on penalties to Brazil, remember? Yeah. So Italy fancy themselves. They're all in the tunnel looking all Italian and cool and sophisticated. Paul said the temptation got the better of him. He went out on the pitch and had a look around just before the players all ran out. He looked around and he said, 360. He did a 360 round the Giant Stadium in New Jersey. So he just looked around and he said, wall to wall, green, white and gold. And he said, then everyone saw him and they all started to chant, ooh, ah, Paul Mcgraw. And he said, he walked back in and one of the players said to him, what's it like out there? And he goes, we cannot lose today. We will not lose today. We're going to win this. And the Italians were listening to him. Paul's very, very softly spoken guy. And Paul said that to the other Ireland players in the tunnel behind him. He said, whatever happens today, we do not lose this. And they went out and we won 1-0. Ray Houghton scored and it was like a beautiful, beautiful day. And I was in a pub watching that. And now to hear that story and Paul telling it to me, just goosebumps.
You talk about these spine-tingling moments. That's like the third time in this interview I've felt like that. I will definitely be getting this book when you get around to writing it.
Yeah, if any famous athletes out there are listening to this, any women in particular, I need more female athletes. But it's coming along. I mean, there's some great stories. I've got like cycling stories, football stories, Kipchoge. It's going to be called Greatest Day, and that's all it is. One question, one answer.
Oh, that's fantastic. Absolutely incredible. Well, Enda, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It's been incredibly interesting.
Oh, pleasure's mine, Will. And thanks to the running community for everything I've learned from all the people I see at races, from watching them, from listening to them, from podcasts like yours, and from beyond the ultimate, I would have to say, changed my thinking, changed my running, and I can't wait to go to one of the events again because I've got plans for 2021. I'd love to be in Namibia. The Desert Ultra intrigues me, and let's just keep running and stay safe.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Enda, as you said earlier, one of the great things about running and about the kind of events we're talking about here are the people you get to meet. And, you know, it was great to get to meet you and great to get to talk to you again today. So thank you very much.
And very best of luck to Chris as well. I know it's a challenging time for everyone running business and trying to organize logistics and stuff not happening and people feeling, when are we going to get back to normality? But I promise you, we will run again and we will get back to normality.
Absolutely. And we'll see you somewhere awesome when we do.
Definitely. Thanks, Will. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thank you. Bye.